With common sense for the Commonwealth, it's the John Fredericks Morning Show. Like us on Facebook. Follow John on the new Twitter handle @JF Radio Show. And online, the website, thejohnfredericksshow.com. Listen online anywhere, anytime at washingtontimes.com/listen. And make a note of the new call-in number, toll free at 888-480-JOHN. That's 888-480-5646. Now, with common sense for the Commonwealth, here's John Fredericks.
And at 8:11 here on Monday, April the 1st, no, we're not playing a cruel trick. We are actually welcoming in one of the candidates for the top cop here in the Commonwealth as me, Steve Ray, guest host this morning, along with Sean Kenny, the political editor of BearingDrift.com. On the line is Rob Bell, who is one of the two running for the GOP nomination for Attorney General. Good morning, Rob. How are you, sir?
Good morning. Good morning, Sean. This is a pleasant surprise. I didn't know you'd be the host today.
I didn't know you were going to be on the show either, so this is awesome. This is my delegate. Well, he's not my delegate, but he represents the one half of Fluvanna County out where I'm at. So, great to have you on the show, Rob.
I said I'm one of the few people that know you first as a supervisor.
Exactly.
As we know you as a delegate as well.
That's right. Well, good. Nice to talk to you. Happy Easter and happy April Fool's Day.
Well, thank you very much.
By the way, and it is no April Fool's. This is Sean's birthday.
No kidding.
Another trip around the sun. It's one of the cruelest strokes ever played on a human being, but there it is.
Either that or having a birthday on Christmas where you only get one set of presents.
Well, maybe so, but April Fool's Day in a Catholic school.
Oh,
how do you think I survived as a small child? I don't know.
That explains the ruler marks on your knuckles.
Well, they heal.
There you go.
They heal.
Delegate Rob Bell is here, of course, because he is one of two candidates on the GOP side who is running for the top cop position, the Attorney General position here in the Commonwealth in this next election cycle. And I'm going to lead off and then hand it over to Sean. Most of the Republican guests that we've had on, and a few of the Democrats as well, have said very clearly, between you and Mark Obenshain, you have two very qualified, two very friendly, personable guys, either one of whom could be the next Attorney General and do that job in fine fashion. For those people who haven't heard one of the 2 or 3 interviews we've done with you previous, please lay out, and you don't have to break the 11th Reagan commandment of talking ill about a fellow Republican. That's not what I'm looking for here. What are the major differences between you and Mark Obenshain for those who still haven't made up their mind?
Well, the way that I've generally described it is I'm not going to speak about Mark. Let me just say something that I bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is I have a law enforcement background. And I was a prosecutor in Orange County, Virginia for 5 years, did 2,400 cases, spent time visiting crime victims at their houses, talked to them at my office, worked with the police. And it was my job to help prosecute those cases. And I think that does two things. I think it has given me sort of an experience and background that has helped me be a better public safety advocate in the General Assembly. And so if you look at the bills I've done things on repeat offense drunk drivers that came directly from my experience as a prosecutor. It was the bill that said that if you're a sex offender of a certain type, you can't go on school property. That was my bill. We had the bill that expanded protective orders. That came out of my experience as a prosecutor. The most recent public safety bill that we're especially proud of was we looked at the men who commit serious sex crimes against children under 12, and we saw that the sentences were far too short and they were reoffending. And so it was my bill, and I said, we will give you a life sentence, no exceptions, no excuses, if you rape a child who's 12 or under. That passed. That's the law of the land. So I think, if you're going to be the top cop, it's a useful skill to have been a cop. The second thing is it will help me beat Mark Herring, and the experience that I have is something he doesn't have. He's never prosecuted so much as a traffic ticket, and it shows in his legislative record. And the example of there are many examples that he has voted foolishly on public safety bills, but I'll just pick one. There was a bill that said that felons currently, if you're a contractor, you can't bring felons onto school property. It's just we don't want them around the kids. So if you're fixing the roof, providing janitor service, if you're the one who gives the food to the cafeteria and you're a contractor, you cannot have felons coming onto school property. And he voted for a bill to change that, to make it easier, actually make it possible for the contractor to bring felons onto school property. And the kind of felons you can bring onto school property under the bill he voted for were things like drug dealers who deal drugs to kids.
My goodness.
And
now,
I assume it's because he doesn't know what he's doing. I assume it's because he didn't read the bill or doesn't understand the bill, but it was a very short bill, and that's all the bill did, and he voted for it. So I think that the law enforcement background that I have will make it easy to draw a comparison that Virginia voters like.
Now, before I hand you over to Sean, I want to point out to people who are not familiar with Orange County, that is the county smack dab between Culpeper and Fredericksburg. It's a major growth area. So you've got that in terms of your resume and how that will translate to the statewide office. But another thing a lot of people don't realize is that you are very, very keen on mental health reform issues, and I don't think it's something we've talked about on the show yet.
No, that was something that sort of fell into my lap. I was the chairman of the subcommittee when Virginia Tech occurred, we had there were multiple ways that could have gone, and obviously there was a strong push for let's focus on the gun, and I said, among others, that's not really where the problem is. The problem is our mental health laws, and we had a gentleman who was profoundly mentally ill and had been identified as such and had even gone before a special magistrate and ordered into treatment. And yet when he didn't go, nothing happened. And then, of course, he got worse and worse, and finally, they call it decompensating, but obviously killed more than 30 people. And so we went through a thoroughgoing, it was the largest set of reforms in decades, of how we handle people who are profoundly mentally ill and a danger to themselves or somebody else. And the primary thing was we looked at how did he slip between the cracks? What were the mistakes we made? That was sort of the first reform, was fixing that. And there are no doubt other problems with the system, but we think at least with regard to the mistakes and problems that led to Mr. Cho not getting treatment, we think we got those fixed. And then the second was recognition that many people who are mentally ill can feel themselves slipping. In other words, we don't have to wait until it's a police issue and people come to the house. You can often, if you give them a place to go, they can catch them. So we've really tried to do these what they call crisis stabilization units, CSUs. And what it is would be, you're on meds, but the meds, you've gone off your meds, but you can feel yourself becoming paranoid or whatever the issue that you have is. You check yourself in, and they're not locked down, but they have a nurse, and they give you a quiet place, and they help you get your meds stabilized, and after a few days you can go back out into the community. We've had good luck with those two. And so you have sort of those two parts working together, and then, of course, you can take it a step further and say try to find ways that even before you get there, we have better oversight through the community service boards. If you can figure out a way to do all three, that will largely help the problems that we've had. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Sure. Delegate Bell, let me go ahead and move over away from mental health reform,
sure.
Which you've done admirable work there, and move over to some of the top of the ticket issues. Obviously, Ken Cuccinelli has come out with regards to restoring the rights of nonviolent felons. There's many in the minority community that have been clamoring for that. Obviously, minority outreach has been a real concern. My question is what is your position on that? And would you support Cuccinelli's position on restoring the voting rights for nonviolent felons?
Well, we do have a difference on this. Let's be let's be clear what the current law is. Right now, Virginia has, you lose your voting rights, your rights to sit on a jury, your right to run for office. We call them your civil rights. You lose them when you are convicted of a felony. Virginia has a process in place right now where you can apply for restoration of rights. And what happens is you can apply through the governor's office. If it's there's certain categories of it. If it's the nonviolent felonies, it's a fairly simple and straightforward process. If it's a violent felony, he asks you to file more paperwork to show that you're going in the right direction. But they're taken up on a case-by-case basis. I prefer that approach. I think that there should absolutely be a way that you can get your rights back, but I don't like an automatic approach. And let me just tell you why. The whole criminal justice system is based on a case-by-case individual approximation. We don't just say, well, you were charged with shoplifting, you were charged with this, you were charged with that. We look at your case individually to see whether you did it, and then there's a range of punishments for most crimes, and they base it based on what they think you did. I think the same approach makes sense on the back end, which would be some people who have committed crimes have learned their lesson, turned their lives around, gotten their act together. They're the ones that come up to me in the street as a former prosecutor and introduce themselves and, hey, Mr. Bell, I want to tell you how I'm doing. And it's always a great conversation. It means they're doing good. There are other people that use jail or prison as we say, a finishing school for crime. Yes. And they go in and they get better and they learn new techniques and they make new friends that we wish they hadn't. And I do not like the idea of treating them the same.
Sure.
I think the notion that you treat those that have turned their lives around exactly the same as the people that are intent on committing additional crimes, it doesn't make sense from a conservative perspective. We think we should have individual accountability, and if you've got your life together, that's great, and we'll help you along the way. But if you haven't, I don't see why we should treat you the same as somebody else.
Let me ask you a little bit of a different question. This is more of a, I guess, philosophical rather than a political one. But there's always this concern when you get from the law and order wing. It's the old Ciceronian quote. Summum meus, summum injuria. It's the maximum.
I went
law.
to Catholic school, but it sounds like you took more Latin than me.
A little bit, but it's maximum law is maximum injury. Is a pretty literal translation of it, meaning that sometimes we can go a little bit too far. How would you define your balance as you're going around your Virginia's top cop? Obviously there's always a tendency to you always hear the extreme. It's like put people in jail for jaywalking and kind of thing. Obviously that's not where we're heading right now. But how do you really set the tone, or how do you really define that punishments appropriately fit the crime?
Well, I mean that is I think a fundamental conversation about how we do criminal law, and it's something we look at a lot. It is easy. Let's just talk about writing the law in the first place. It is always easy to catch the guilty person. You just cast the net bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you can catch them.
Right.
The hard part is to try to draft a law that catches the guilty person without catching too many innocent people. That's always the goal. And I'll give you an example. We had a bill that we worked on this year, and it was about a 3-year project for financial exploitation of seniors. And everybody says, oh my gosh, what a terrible crime. You have these hustlers, whether it be the contractor who says he'll blacktop her driveway and then claims that the tree is going to fall into her house, and before she knows it, she's written a $15,000 check. Or, frankly, more typically, it's the family member that takes grandma for a car, and then a week later comes in and says, gosh, I need help with a car, and another week says, I need help with a car, that kind of thing. Both of those happen. But so we looked at other states. Well, other states would have cast the net so broadly it would have caught in the family member who's just trying to help, and or wouldn't let grandma make any additional purchases. It literally wouldn't let her buy a car for her grandson, even if she wanted to. And so we worked, and the goal, again, it was easy to get. You could have said, anytime anyone gets money from someone over 65, they have committed a crime. And some of the early versions were pretty close to that. That then doesn't make any sense. You're
That's
catching
pretty broad
well, you're
net.
catching all sorts of innocent conduct.
It is.
Yeah. And so instead, we worked, and the final version, we actually took it to the Crime Commission because this was such a sort of we after trying twice to try to get it right during the session, we just said this is something we're not going to get right with such a short schedule. But we said we will only punish you if you get it through. First off, they've got to be mentally incapacitated because obviously many seniors are not incapacitated at all. Then you have to get it through that mental incapacity. We're not just going to say that if someone who's mentally incapacitated gives money to something or some charity or some such, that's necessarily criminal. Sure. Those are the things you're trying to balance. And then on the sentencing side, you're trying to balance sort of the harm done versus the deterrent effect versus what we call the incapacity effect, which would be it's also called specific deterrent, which would be it's not trying to deter the next guy in line, it's trying to deter you because you think you yourself are such a repeat offense criminal. And sometimes those are in contradiction. I'll give you an example. The serious crime that has the lowest recidivism rate always surprises people, and it's homicide. And,
really?
Well,
really?
Yeah, and of course
that is surprising.
Well, but you think about it. Take away killings for sort of professional killings, and what you have are a lot of people that want to kill one person. You're no good cheating husband, and having killed your no good cheating husband, the chance of you having another no good cheating husband that you will have to kill is pretty modest. But nobody says, well, goodness, since the recidivism rate is so low, we need to not worry about that crime.
I guess you run out of husbands at some point in time.
Hopefully the next husband will know better.
Exactly. Let me go ahead and I'm going to switch gears.
Let me finish real quick.
Oh, sure.
There are other crimes that are less serious but very high recidivism rate, where you essentially have professional criminals. The example they always use is car thieves. They see this as a business, and they see going to jail as just the cost of going to business. And so you try to figure out the right punishment for the offense based on the badness of the offense, plus some notion of recidivism and deterrence.
Common Sense News Time coming up on 8:25 here on the John Frederick Show. Executive producer Steve Ray, and this week, along with a series of guest hosts this morning and tomorrow, of course, political editor of BearingDrift.com, Sean Kenny is with us, and we're speaking with Delegate Rob Bell, of course, one of the two candidates for the GOP nomination for Attorney General. And Delegate Bell, as we head towards Wednesday, which is the beginning of the special session, I want you to talk about your success in getting through the bill that pertains to these predatory human traffickers, your House Bill 1870, which I believe has now been signed into law.
Yeah, I'm real happy with that. And what you have, just human trafficking, I'm not sure everybody knows what we're talking about. Human trafficking are the guys who cruise shopping malls and middle schools and bus stations and look for sad and lonely girls, almost not all girls, but sad and lonely children, often girls.
Yeah.
And they promise them a different life. And they say, your dad really is a jerk, isn't he? Well, listen, I can show you a glamorous life in wherever, but far away. Let's get you out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife taught high school and all of us were teenagers once, there were times in most of our lives where somebody promised us a chance to get away and they caught us at just the right moment. Most of us, many people would have at one point said, I can't wait to get out of here. Nobody understands me. Nobody loves me.
Right,
I want to go. That's what human trafficking is. And, of course, what they find once they get away from their family and friends and the guy takes their cell phone and he's the only one providing food and rent, is prostitution. I mean, that's the vast majority of that, what they call human trafficking, is the sex trade. That's the group we're talking about, and these are truly bad people.
These are probably the sickest crimes that you'll come across besides homicides and so forth, because they are truly predatory.
That's right, and it's we have sex crimes where the predator does the act himself. This is just by a different mechanism. It is every bit as bad. It's just by a different mechanism. And again, so what we found, of course, is that they are trying to get them away from their home, and so as more than many crimes. Long story short, the bill allows them to be investigated through multi-jurisdictional grand juries, which allows you to be in more than one jurisdiction at a time. It makes it easier to sort of investigate and prosecute these cases. These cases are specifically about getting the kids away from their home, so they are very commonly not in just a single jurisdiction. And so with this multi-jurisdictional grand jury, makes it easier to investigate. That's what it does.
Delegate Rob Bell has been with us here on the John Frederick Show. I can't thank you enough for the time, and I have made a note that tomorrow at 7:10, one of your endorsers, 5th Congressional District Congressman Robert Hurt, will be with us. Have you picked up any new endorsements along the way here as you are in the final glide path to May 18th?
Oh, sure. And we pick up the sort of elected officials and grassroots officials. The Southampton chair endorsed me on Saturday when I was down at his mass meeting. But the ones I'm really proud of are some of the people fighting for the Constitution right now, sort of the frontline fighters. And Dick Heller, he's the man who sued Washington, D.C. over their gun laws and won.
Yes.
He has endorsed me. Bob Wilson, who is the gentleman whose Norfolk property is being taken by the city to make a movie theater, basically, he's endorsed me. And then Martha Bonita, who is the lady up in Fauquier who has been threatened with a $5,000 fine.
Yeah. That was an amazing case. My goodness.
Extraordinary. Anyway, she has endorsed me. They have all said we want him to be the Attorney General to fight for our constitutional rights, and I'm humbled and honored to be the person they've endorsed. Those are three that are sort of real people on top of all them, like you say, Congressman Hurt, the elected officials, and the local party officials. We are up against the clock, but we thank you so much for the time. The website is Rob Bell 4AG. That's F-O-R, by the way, Rob Bell, FORAG.com. You have an appearance coming up in the next day or so? Oh, we're doing every day. Yeah. Just cast a net and you'll find Rob Bell somewhere here in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. Thank you so much, Delegate. We appreciate the time as always. Yeah, thanks, Rob. You bet. Bye. There we go. Coming up on half past the hour here on the John Frederick Show, our window on the weather brought to you by the good folks at Air Conditioning Specialists and our good friends, the owners Chrissy and Alan Smith. You can expect only the very best with Air Conditioning Specialists. Their promise to deliver to you the perfect HVAC system with outstanding quality products and superior knock-your-socks-off customer service. For all your air conditioning needs, go to acspecialists.net. 56 degrees right now, clear this morning with highs staying in the mid to upper 60s to low 50s midday in Virginia Beach. 52 degrees with highs in the upper 60s, clear for Richmond and Central Virginia. 49 degrees, partly sunny with highs only in the low 60s in Lynchburg and Roanoke. And 48 degrees right now with highs scheduled to be in the low 60s. I did that scheduling, by the way, for opening day here in the nation's capital. On the way, is one of the Magnificent Seven. That would be Pete Snyder, one of the 7 candidates for the GOP nomination for
lieutenant governor here in the Commonwealth. Now, Common Sense time is 8:30. Right on the button. More Commonwealth headlines now with Ken Johnson. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, everybody. A new poll by the University of Mary Washington Center for Leadership and Media Studies indicates Virginians are essentially split on same-sex marriage less than 7 years after an amendment to the state constitution was passed that defines marriage as being only between one man and one woman. While 46% of Virginians oppose allowing gay and lesbian couples to marry legally in the Commonwealth, 45% support the idea. In 2006, 57% of Virginians supported the ban, 43% opposed it. Regionally, same-sex marriage finds its greatest support in Northern Virginia, 59%, and the least in the western portion of the state with 31%. Among party lines, a majority of Democrats and independents supported the legal marriage, while a majority of Republicans oppose it. A Quinnipiac University poll indicates that the majority of Virginians say the names of concealed weapons holders should not be made public, 60% to 35%. The poll comes on the heels of the passage of a General Assembly bill that would prohibit court clerks from releasing such information. Among Republicans, 76% support sealing concealed carry records compared to 16% who oppose. Only 40% of Democrats thought the list should be off-limits, 55% thought it should be public record. The Navy has awarded a $2.6 billion contract to Newport News Shipbuilding to conduct the 25-year midlife refueling and overhaul of the Norfolk-based aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, including refueling the reactors, repairing and upgrading the infrastructure, and modernizing the combat and communication systems. The overhaul has been delayed about 6 weeks because Congress has failed to pass an appropriations bill in time to begin the work. The overhaul is scheduled to be completed in November 2016. Virginia State Police say about 75 vehicles crashed Sunday along a mountainous, foggy stretch of Interstate 77 near the Virginia-North Carolina border, killing 3 people and injuring more than 20 others. There was heavy fog at the time. About 24 people were taken to a shelter, with more expected to arrive. The site was set up to accommodate about 100 people. The crashes remain under investigation. Virginia Employment Commission officials say Virginia's unemployment rate was unchanged at 5.6% in February for the third straight month. The rate was down from 5.9% in February 2012. The figures have been adjusted for seasonal factors such as school closings and temporary fluctuations in industries such as tourism and construction. Virginia's jobless rate remained well below the February national rate of 7.7%, which was down from 7.9% in January. U.S. Senator Mark Warner has confirmed that he is running for re-election when his first term expires in 2014. Warner has made a name for himself nationally as a bipartisan advocate for debt reduction, and at times he is considered running for president, as well as returning to his former job as governor of Virginia. However, he has discarded that idea, at least for now, because of concerns about the budget impasse in Congress. State and local news brought to you by the Chris Weaver Real Estate Team. They are your Virginia real estate leader, recognized by the Wall Street Journal as a top 100 team of all real estate teams across the entire United States. So if you want to get it done right, buying, selling, or leasing, get it done by the team that does it right. Chris Weaver, chrisweaver.com, KRISweaver.com.
With common sense for the Commonwealth, it's the John Fredericks Morning Show. Like us on Facebook. Follow John on the new Twitter handle @JF Radio Show. And online, the website, thejohnfredericksshow.com. Listen online anywhere, anytime at washingtontimes.com/listen. And make a note of the new call-in number, toll-free at 888-480-JOHN. That's 888-480-5646. Now, with common sense for the Commonwealth, here's John Fredericks.
And John, of course, on spring break this week. It is Monday, April the 1st, coming up on 8:40 now. Common Sense News Time here on the John Frederick Show. Steve Ray in all week. And our guest host today and tomorrow, the political editor of BearingDrift.com, Sean Kenny, is here. And we dial in one of the Magnificent Seven, of course, Pete Snyder, who is one of the 7 running for the GOP nomination for Lieutenant Governor. Sean, take it away. We've got plenty to chew on this morning.
Pete, how are you doing this morning?
Hey, Sean, good morning. First and foremost, happy birthday, my man. This is how you celebrate. You know, what did I hear also? What, Fredericks is on spring break?
Yeah, you know, how does that work? He gets spring break, and I got to come in and do his job. How does that work?
The thought of Fredericks in a Speedo just makes me shiver.
You
It's
know,
horrible.
no.
We were planning to have breakfast at some point today. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I'm good for like the next week. Oh. In any event, how's the campaign treating you, man?
Hey, absolutely loving it. We're crisscrossing the Commonwealth, hitting just about every nook and cranny of the Commonwealth, heading down to York County tonight. So we've been having a blast, and I think people are having a good response to our Big Ideas campaign. We're out there being happy warriors, pushing for bold conservative agendas, and making some traction. But you tell me, how are we doing?
I don't know. I mean, outside looking in, it looks like you've got all cylinders clicking. I mean, clearly on social media, you've got that nailed down. One would expect that from your campaign. I guess the real question is I mean, when you start talking about the delegate counts, I mean, you end up talking to all 7 campaigns, and you ask how are they doing, and uniformly, all 7 of them say, great. Yeah, I mean, you start adding up their own delegate counts, and they start getting to, there's like 3 times as many people that are going to show up at this convention than what are actually going to be there. So, realistically, I mean, how do you think you're doing? Where do you think you're going right now? What do you think is going to be the focus for the next 6 to 7 weeks?
It's all about really, right now, as you mentioned delegate counts, about 65 to 70% of the pie is already baked, meaning about 65 to 70% of Virginia has already filed, the various units have already filed to go to convention. So we have a pretty good understanding of how we're doing around the Commonwealth. I like where we are right now as far as our delegate counts. And, really it's the closing month of making your closing argument, making sure that those that are undecided out there that we're getting in front of, and also trying to pick some folks off from perhaps some of my competitors. This is high season, and this is what politics is all about. That's the great thing about Virginia. You have this grassroots process that really forces knuckleheads like me and the other candidates to go out there and talk with people one-on-one, have them kick the tires, squeeze the Sherman on us, and see what we're all about.
Let me ask you just real quick. I mean, obviously, you've got a lot. We had Bill Bowling on the show last week. He was talking about his endorsement for Ken Cuccinelli, and he was being real, sort of touch and go on that one. And we talked about it in studio and said, well, gee, I wonder how Pete Snyder would react to a Bill Bowling endorsement. So I'm going to ask you point blank. Today, Bill Bowling comes out with the announcement that says, I'm endorsing Pete Snyder. How does Pete Snyder react?
Sean, I would accept it with open arms so long as it was tied to a full-throated endorsement of Ken Cuccinelli.
Yes!
If Bill wants to endorse the entire ticket, which I think he will do,
Goal!
I'm all for
Goal!
it. There's your score of the days.
Well done. But
Wow.
How come
Send
we're
that
not
endorsement right over for the entire ticket, for me, for Ken, for the AGs. Let's do it.
outstanding? Great answer. But the great answer. How? I mean, why is that so difficult for? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and beat up on Bill Bowling at all. But I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people playing political football with Bill Bowling as to where his supporters going, who's doing this, who's doing that, whatever the case may be. But really, I mean, tell me a little bit. I mean, obviously, you've got a pretty good record about bringing people together within the party, about bringing in minorities and folks that have somewhat felt that the Republican Party has walked away from them. How are you reaching out, to minority communities, whether it's African Americans or Hispanics or even here in Northern Virginia, you're talking about Koreans and other constituencies that have really made their impact felt. How are you reaching out to those constituencies and reminding them that none of them are forgotten?
Sean, I think it's vitally important that we grow our party across all demographics, across all age ranges, and the way we're doing it in my campaign is that we're not behaving like Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats love to take all sorts of different constituencies, put a hyphen in their names, and put them in a little box, and do classic pander politics.
Mm-hmm.
We're not at all. We're making our campaign about ideas, education reform, economic development, cutting the size and scope of government by 10%. And if you look back in the history of our party, when we do the best, it's when we have idea-driven candidacy, period. Mm-hmm. So, we've found that that's really touched a nerve with voters under 40 years old. We've found that across demographics, especially in Latino communities, the thirst and hunger for education reform is sky high. I mean, those are the communities that are most impacted by our failing school systems. So we're doing idea politics. We're trying to be bold in what we do, and I think it's working. And that's what our party needs to do to grow in the future.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Let me ask you a quick follow-up to all of that. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about bringing people together and all of that, but obviously, that's sort of the job of the lieutenant governor. I mean, you're not really just the Republican; you're also the president of the Senate. So you're you're the individual that's sort of you're not the president of the Senate, but you're at least presiding over it in any event. Which means that not only are you the 21st vote, you've also got 40 individuals sitting in that chamber. As the 21st vote, when it really comes down to it, obviously you're expected to sort of bridge the divide and help try to build consensus where you can. But when it comes down to that 21st vote, how does Pete Snyder react? And what are the votes that are really going to define you as a lieutenant governor? And on what issues are you willing to push everything to the center of the table and go all in?
Well, I think what I've been highlighting in this campaign is the number one issue for me is education reform. For the past 2 years in a row, the bill to have a constitutional amendment to allow for more choice in charter schools in Virginia died in the Virginia Senate. I would absolutely go all in to make sure that we get that one done. Same thing with teacher tenure. We need to eliminate teacher tenure. I want to make sure that Virginia is the best paying state on the East Coast, if not the entire country, for our teachers. But we do that based on performance. We can get that done. So those are two areas that I would have a lot of focus. Look, you can't get anything done in business if you're not able to get people to work together across the boardroom or across company lines. I expect to be able to do the same thing in the Virginia Senate. But I also think that we need to tap into and fire up this state party of ours. I mean, if you look at any of the really close votes that have happened over the past few years, you can't see any evidence of anything beyond just classic Richmond arm twisting going on. What if we put the firepower on finding those 3 or 4 votes and made sure that online ads were out there, TV ads were going, we're putting real pressure, phone calls, emails on some of the squishy votes so we can deliver real conservative reform in Richmond. That's what you get out of me. I don't think that's been tapped at all. Yeah,
you make some excellent points in that one, and in that regard. The I guess real question for you right now is obviously Bill Bowling, is the Chief Job Creations Officer for the Commonwealth of Virginia. There's some question as whether that will continue, depending on exactly who wins the governor's mansion in November. Obviously you've got a bit of a tradition to pick up there in terms of job creation. It's the number one issue in voters' minds right now. As Lieutenant Governor, how are you going to push forward on that and build on some of the real initiatives you have regarding education reform? How does that translate into job creation in the Commonwealth?
Well, Sean, first and foremost, I'm running alongside of some very fine and accomplished men and women. But if you look at the field for the Lieutenant Governor candidate, actually, if you look at the entire field of all the Democrats and Republicans running for every office, I'm the only one in there with a proven record as a job creator in Virginia. I've started 2 companies in Virginia, created hundreds of jobs in the Commonwealth. I think I would be a natural to pick up that mantle and to help focus on education, on economic development. And you asked, how does education reform tie into it? Any CEO that's looking to move their company to Virginia is going to look at 3 things. They're going to want to make sure that they're going into a low-tax, low-regulatory environment, and also they want to make sure that they have an educated workforce, and that goes right to our schools. Fixing our schools is one of the number one things we can do to continue sustainable economic development in the Commonwealth for the next several decades, period.
Let me ask you, too, I mean, the Governor's Opportunity Fund is one thing that's been, criticized a great deal. Crony capitalism has been one of the charges that have been thrown at it, and obviously there's a lot of mixed messages on that. As you're striving to get towards that 10% cut, is that something that you'd be willing to target and say that it's something that we need to look at?
Sean, everything is on the table. Everything's on the table. And, look, we're gonna obviously make sure that when it comes to protecting our communities and making sure that I want to make sure our teachers are paid better, but we need to look at every single part of our budget and find out where there are inefficiencies. I am not a big believer in corporate welfare. I don't think it works. I think the role of government is to level the playing field. Let's focus instead on corporate welfare. Let's get rid of the corporate income tax.
There you go.
That's what government should be doing, not trying to put sweetheart deals together. So I would make sure that we're looking at every single part of that budget enrichment that people say can't possibly be trimmed down, and come at it with a reform agenda. Let's focus on things that level the playing field, like eliminating the corporate income tax, which will really make Virginia a haven for small fry entrepreneurs like me, and also medium and large-sized businesses as well.
Speaking of taxes, we had her earlier on the show, Terry McAuliffe, lines regarding Medicaid and federal compliance. He was talking about $21 billion, which the federal government would pick up over the next 3 years, which would be ratcheted down to only 90% of that, which is effectively about $2.1 billion that the Virginia taxpayer would somehow have to find to pick up to that. I wanted to get your reaction to Terry McAuliffe's tax plan and see whether or not you agree with him or disagree with him, and what your take on that would be.
Well, I think expansion of Medicaid is a ticking time bomb, for Virginia taxpayers, period. If you look at, in just a few years, at the near $1 billion deficit that we're going to have when that money starts to evaporate. Sean, you and I both know it. The listeners know it. No such thing as free money. When it's tied to expanding the size and scope of government, it's usually a really bad thing. And I'm just shocked that Terry McAuliffe and also, all the Democrats running for lieutenant governor have called for the expansion of Medicaid, but they haven't asked for any reforms in the program, any efficiencies, any plan to root out the waste, fraud, and abuse that happens there to make the program better. They're just lock, stock, take the deal, take more money, expand the size of government.
There you go.
Cool.
Hey, Pete, before we run out of time, I want to make sure that they get we get your website and your Twitter feed out there, because that's a great way to follow you.
Thank you, Steve. It's at Pete Snyder on Twitter, and our website is PeteSnyder.com. Also, if you want to sign up to be a delegate, go to IMIN2013.com. Sign up, be a part of this amazing convention process that we have in Virginia. Hop on board our campaign. We're going to get this thing done.
And the best part about that app is it's nonpartisan, non-candidate specific. So IMIN2013.com is the way to go. And it'll give you all the information that you might not be able to get if you have to traverse through rpv.org. It's a great app. I've used it. John's used it. We're all in. Yes, we are all in. Pete Snyder, thanks so much for the time this morning. We appreciate
Steve, are you hopping out of a cake for Sean Kenny this morning? Is that what's going on?
It could be John. It could be John jumping out of a cake in a Speedo. That would be horrible.
We've got 6 minutes left in the show. We've got 6 minutes left in the show. You never know. I could have a male stripper coming in through the door any moment. You never know.
I am gone.
Right,
Thank you.
Pete, you're the best. Thanks for the time. We appreciate it this morning.
All right. Thanks, Pete.
All right. Coming up on 8:54 now here on the John Frederick Show. Back in a short 90 seconds to tell you who's on tomorrow, as well as more to come today here in the news cycle on the John Frederick Show.
Hi, I'm Mike Watson, president of CatLab, Accredited Calibration Laboratories. If your job is to ensure the integrity of instrumentation in your facility, you know the importance of a reliable calibration lab. Your company is serious about quality and compliance and relies on your expertise for both. So when it comes to the accuracy of your test equipment, you can rely on us. CatLab is accredited, prompt, and local, and since 1989 has partnered with manufacturers around the globe. Built by technicians for technicians. Visit CatLab at catlab.net.
For over 100 years, Hargrave Military Academy has remained a leader in character development. It's an expectation and a way of life at Hargrave. Character development, academics, and leadership are essential advancements at Hargrave. Through academic learning and cadet leadership, students discover character through their actions. Each month, a character theme is highlighted. Hargrave's April character theme is honesty. Learn how Hargrave's character development, academics, and leadership programs can build his future. Families interested in a structured academic setting can learn more by attending an educational and informative open house at Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia on Saturday, April 13th at 12:30 p.m. Call 800-434-2480 for more information. That's 800-434-2480. Or visit hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Academy. Build his future.
And remember, that's only a couple of Saturdays away on the 13th of April, so take advantage of it now. That's Hargrave, singular, as always, hargrave.edu. It is now 8:56 here on the John Frederick Show, brought to you today by Ending Spending. Ending Spending is focused like a laser beam on finding solutions to the nation's crippling fiscal and debt crisis. Ending Spending does support Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli for governor and entrepreneur and businessman Pete Snyder for lieutenant governor. Two strong, unwavering fiscal conservatives who will move Virginia forward, expand the economy, and create jobs. For more information, go to endingspending.com. That's endingspending.com. This message is paid for by endingspending.com. Sean, a terrific show today on your birthday. I think we put this in the time capsule, send it over to the Museum of Broadcasting, and you're all set to go as a...
and there we go.
As I don't know what, but as a...
So something.
Yeah. As a guy who came in on his birthday and hosted a pretty darn good radio show. By the way, you're back tomorrow. Wednesday, Congressman Rob Whitman from Virginia's 1st will be here. State Senator John Miller, the Democrat from Newport News, on Thursday. And on Friday, Delegate David Ramadan, the Republican who covers part of Loudoun County and just the upper tip of Prince William County. So, you all set? Should we get out of here and maybe pick up some tickets for Nats Park?
Yeah, got to happen. Got to happen. Thank God for opening day.
Yeah, no kidding. That really saved us. As a matter of fact, in the open, we didn't get a chance to focus on this, but I just want to play Davey Johnson one more time as he talks about the Nats this year.
I like our chances, and there's nothing better than being in a pennant race. It fires me up, and I don't mind being the defending National League East champs. I like that, and I like the fact that everybody knows we've got a good ball club here.
Yeah, they got targets on their back this time around, don't they,
That
Sean?
they do, but that's okay because we have Zimmerman, and it's all good.
We not only have one Zimmerman, we have two Zimmermans.
That's right.
With two members. Jordan Zimmerman is great on the mound, believe me.
And I'll tell you, you think about it, 10 years ago, these guys were the Expos.
Yeah.
And, coming to Washington, playing this kind of baseball, I love it. I love having Major League Baseball in the nation's capital. It's outstanding.
On Friday, by the way, we will have Corey Stewart with us. He is the chairman of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors, and he is responsible for the brand new stadium for the High A Carolina League affiliate Potomac Nationals. That'll be built over the next 2 years, so we'll talk to him about that. And tomorrow, by the way, as Sean returns, we will also have from the House Financial Services Committee, very important gentleman. He represents the 5th District here in the Commonwealth, Congressman Robert Hurt, among others, here on the John Frederick Show. Sean, get your nap in. You're back in tomorrow at 6 a.m. with me, and we'll toss it around one more time and have a good day.
Yep, do the same.
All right. It is now 8:59 here on the John Frederick Show. If you're driving in Virginia, please be extra careful and take it upon yourself not to text and drive, all right?